the Republican Party, for instance, in the US, and the Conservative Party in the UK. Part of it is tonal. Part of it goes back to that thing I mentioned at the beginning of the Conservative Party having for a long time made its peace with the welfare state. And I think beyond that, there's a very interesting question within British conservatism, which is there much more than the economic element of it? And that's something which I think in the States you could say yes, and it's essentially the defense of the amendments and of the Constitution and some social issues which you obviously, like abortion, go round and round and fight very, very hard on. In a way which I admire the fact that America still takes certain very fundamental issues very seriously and debates them seriously. But in the UK, we don't have those sorts of issues. We don't really have these litmus test issues. I think that's a failure in many ways. And I've often had this conversation with other conservatives and conservative philosophers in the UK of what conservative thinking in the UK really is. Because it has been hard in recent decades to identify what it is beyond a certain view of the state, a certain view of the economy. I'd say this is something that needs to be addressed because conservatives took an awful lot for granted in the UK, and probably have been reminded, all of us in our lifetimes, of how unwise that is. Let me give an example. I mean, we have a monarchy in the UK, and this is just part of the fabric of the state. Now, I would say that it's obvious that the Conservative would inevitably be defensive of the monarchy, would inevitably be in favour of the monarchy. But it isn't something you hear people going on about. Because it's sort of agreed upon, it's accepted. There are some people who want to get rid of the monarchy. But my point is that we have great institutions in the UK, wonderful institutions, which have endured the test of time, and have provided, as the Queen has actually, in particular in recent weeks, extraordinary level of unity and really moral encouragement to the country. But I mention that because conservatives don't go on about it, because it's just in the fabric of the nation. And many of these institutions, many things that are conservative, we've just forgotten to talk about. And I mentioned Roger Scruton earlier, who was a great friend and a great inspiration to me. And Roger was always thinking about this. Why is it that conservatives have so little to say about, for instance, beauty, the built environment? What does it matter if you've got a conservative government in power if it's wrecked the inner cities of all of our beautiful cities and put up horrible, horrible monstrosity buildings? I think it was Lord Clark, Alan Clark's father, Kenneth Clark, Lord Clark of Civilization, who said that if you want to judge a civilization, you shouldn't read the speeches of the finance minister. You should look at what buildings they've erected. That'll tell you everything very, very fast. And I do think that there's something in that. What did it matter to have post-war conservative governments erecting huge tower blocks that they expected the populace to live in? So there are an awful lot of questions which we've just presumed, and a lot of these presumptions have just been allowed to go by conservatives in the belief that, well, at least we've got control of the economy. And that is something I think which everybody on the right has to think about more. Mainly, sorry, I'm going on it, but let me just say one thing. Mainly because it's so striking to me that the left speaks at a totally different level from the right on issue after issue. Again, this may not be the case quite so much in the US, but I'm just so struck by the fact that the left does something like inequality, and the right talks about a small increase in house building in brownfield site areas or something. It's like, wow, that's going to fire them up. And again and again on issue after issue, that's what happens. The left talks to things that are very deep. I often used to talk about this with Roger. Look at resentment, and look at resentment, envy, Those are deep, deep human instincts to play to. And when the left does resentment and envy, if the right just says, oh, we found this really interesting tax loophole that we can address, it's not that you're not doing anything, but you are not acting at the same level. If somebody does resentment to you, you need to do something of equal weight back. I would argue on that one, aspiration, for instance. But you need to talk, if somebody else is talking about despair, you need to talk about hope. You know, you need to counter these out. And I think we haven't done, actually. Conservatism in the UK has been in power, but has done a horrible job.
So in just a second, we're going to talk about the royal family and the European perspective on President Trump. If you want to hear Douglas Murray's answers on those specific questions, head on over to dailywire.com/subscribe and become a member. You can hear the rest of our conversation over there. Well, Douglas Murray, really appreciate your time. Go check out Douglas's books, Madness of Crowds, as well as The Strange Death of Europe. Douglas, stay safe in there forever, since none of us are ever leaving our homes. And we won't have to worry about the death of civilization because literally we're never going to see it again. So that's exciting stuff.
Yeah, we wouldn't notice it even if it went anymore. It would just be, it would go by. But it's been a great pleasure, Ben. I'm very glad to be able to do this, and I hope to be able to do it in person at some point.
Sounds great. Thanks so much. The Ben Shapiro Show Sunday Special is directed by Mike Joyner and produced by Mathis Glover. Executive producer Jeremy Boring. Associate producer Katie Swinnerton. Our guests are booked by Caitlin Maynard. Post-production is supervised by Alex Zingaro. Editing is by Jim Nickel. Audio is mixed by Mike Coromina. Hair and makeup is by Nika Geneva. Title graphics are by Cynthia Angulo. The Ben Shapiro Show Sunday Special is a Daily Wire production. Copyright Daily Wire 2020.